All right, why don't we move on to professional education and outreach, and we'll ask Paul Izio to present this.
Well, thanks, John and Dave. Great job, and welcome everybody to the meeting. And as John's nicely laid out, kind of the plan for professional education outreach. And again, as he described, this pillar type concept, all these pillars are interconnected and working together. And this has become more evident here. But we're also, Dave is doing a great job focusing on developing research within the university. A lot of that is connected to people in industry, and kind of our role is to make sure we can help facilitate that as well. Next slide, please. So I'm going to just briefly discuss the clinical immersion program, the Baca Medical Device Center, the IEM Industrial Fellows Program, the clinical engagement, spend a little bit more time there, and then just kind of see that's a subset of that is really our COVID-19 response. Next slide, please. So if we first look at the clinical immersion, and John did a really nice job describing this already, this is a program that was launched 5 years ago. It actually took several years to develop and get buy-in from all the various clinical departments. But the goal here is really to allow people from industry to come in and interact in clinical settings with clinical investigators and all levels of people that work in these clinical care settings. And it's important for the opportunity for these individuals to see the dynamics in the various clinical settings, so they can see how to innovate, and they get to interact with all these clinicians. They get to do patient rounding, they get to go to grand rounds. And again, this is really, we've had hundreds of participants. We've focused on a lot of different areas of surgery, cardiology, neurosurgery. We've done some orthopedics, we've done some anesthesia, we've done some patient warming, we've done some wound care. So we've actually customized some of these programs relative to the interests of the industry partners in this. And Ken Rosen has done a phenomenal job of talking with these industry groups, seeing what their needs are, and then we're matching all these programs together. So without Ken now guiding this, we wouldn't really be as successful as we have been. And again, this is a chance to build networks, and I think this has really been critical. This is where we've seen people from industry come to the University of Minnesota and just see the high level or phenomenal clinical care going on here. And then they get to firsthand talk to these clinicians, residents, fellows, rest of the care teams, and get to know them. And this really allows for the development of a network. And they now have new go-to people in various clinical care areas, these people from industry, when they are looking for key opinion leaders, where they're looking for some help and just some conversations about this. So this is really exciting. The whole goal is that these are in person, they're very effective. We'd like to get back to that as soon as possible. Of course, COVID has changed that. We're waiting for approvals from the medical school to allow some in-person visits again for people from industry. We're also looking at virtual options, or maybe making this more of a virtual in-person combination. And so we're going to continue to work on that. And again, this program was growing exponentially. And then, we were hit by COVID, and we're still trying to understand how best to function in clinical settings. So again, we'll continue to develop that. And again, the other thing that these people, when they come to the U, they get to see active research going on, active innovation centers, and we connect people with Dave's groups as well. So again, very exciting to have this networking right here in person at the university. Next slide, please. Of course, we have the early Bach and Medical Device Center led by Art Erdman. This has been developed for well over a decade. Now we have two associate directors, Matt Johnson and Angela, who just came recently from medicine, is a world leader in 3D printing, biologic printers. So it's real exciting to have Angela will be leading this 3D printing area. And again, as John mentioned, looking forward to the overall strategy of IEM. You know, this Bach and Medical Device Center will be an essential part of that innovation pillar as this pillar, again, further develops. So we really see, that when we talk about clinical engagement going forward, we're going to rely heavily on expertise, experience, and basic all the mechanisms that are available within the Bach and Medical Device Center to help these additional programs. Next slide, please. We have the IEM Industrial Fellows Program. There are 25 current fellows. We'll have some new inductees today. And these fellows assist with identifying these clinical immersion program needs, filling groups, finding groups within their companies. And so that's been a really great way to connect with industry and help with the ongoing programs as we use these individuals as our outside ambassadors. So we have them speak at the Inspire conference. Rhonda and Chris will talk about that going forward here. They help recruit U of M students to their companies for either positions or internships. And again, they help engage with clinicians here at the U. So really the plan going forward was to further have them engage more with the new strategies of IEM and this ongoing structure. And we hope to start developing, there are some benefits to Zoom. So you've got these 25 people working in industry. It's hard to get them all in one place at a given time because they're busy, well-productive individuals. So maybe we'll just use Zoom and we'll get these Zoom meetings and then even engage them further and get their, help understand what the needs are in industry and then make that happen here at the U. Next slide, please. The clinical engagement program was developed in 2019. And again, as John mentioned, Will Durfee, Brad Benson, and myself are involved in this program. The concept here is really to, this is the vision of both the deans as well, is to get clinical needs out of the clinical areas and into engineering. And so kind of how I summarize it is in the upper diagram in the upper left, where you find the problem, invent the solution, implement and test. Another way of looking at that is physicians know what their clinical needs are. They've worked in these areas for years. They actually often have solutions, but they're busy clinicians and they have no time to implement. And so this is where we hope to then partner, kind of triage these ideas, try to know what opportunities we have for innovation here at the U, and start to build bridges and build these interdisciplinary teams, like John mentioned, to really kind of move these innovations forward. So this is really an exciting program. We had, over 20 of these ideas come into us, and then Will and Brad and I all kind of triage them. We're kind of like on call. So when these innovations come in, we try to connect with these people within 24 hours. Next slide, please. So kind of out of this clinical engagement, we have the COVID-19 clinical engagement. And this, again, as Dave mentioned, Dr. Odie, we also had the rapid grants program that came out of this. And I think everybody in the leadership team got involved in this. And, you know, this was a big effort that Dave and John spent hours and hours as well, taking these clinical needs that were identified in ventilators, hospital grounds, aerosol booths, these hoods, protective masks, alternatives, ECMO prevention, preventing complications, 3D printed parts. Angela did a lot of this, UV sanitation, sanitizing robots. All these kind of things came as clinical needs. There was a rapid response to it, great efforts put together, and you know, really good outcomes. And we'll go through some of those in more detail. We're not going to stop there. And so part of the clinical engagement program is to continue to track the engagement, continue to enhance these. As Dave mentioned, some of these will be continued research projects with funding, so there'll be sustained research areas for multiple years. So we will hope to track those. And really, we see that the future focus as we're really looking at sustainability across the supply chain. And, you know, looking at IEM's role in long-term pandemic research. Next slide, please. So, you know, the successes have been mentioned already by John. We had the co-venter and the micro-containment systems. And Professor Erdman, well, really led the role on the conventer, but he got industry partners involved as well. This got a rapid FDA approval. They produced over 3,000 of these already. There's an open source license for this. And the goal is really to get out and find the needs, get solutions, and help people as quick as possible. So this is kind of, well, I think John quoted the term, this was clinical engagement on steroids in a way with the COVID response. Micro-containment systems led by Chris Hogan. This was a Fairview need. Assistant Dean Benson actually utilized this. Again, this is an open source license. And we see this is such an interesting concept that IEM is supporting a whole new product design and business development project. It's a 2-year class where we hope to look at the business aspects of this and some additional prototype development. So very exciting. You can see also a lot of corporate partners were involved in this rapid response. Next slide, please. Further clinical engagements, we had the masks, we had the gowns, we had, you know, Professor Durfee and Griffins from the School of Design, really working hard. They, you know, and they're leading this, but they're engaging their graduate students and undergraduates. So, you know, this is really an amazing response. And Steve Slitterman's relative to the gown design, where these were real projects. You can see that, you know, they ran out and Fairview needed them and they produced them and they're using them. But again, now there's open source license for all these different designs. So it's really, you know, again, as the deans mentioned, taking these clinical needs, performing some engineering and really helping medical care. Next slide, please. So thank you very much. And this is a, I guess, pillar that's evolving as IEM is developing their strategic plan. We're developing the PEO pillar, and I'd be happy to hear any additional thoughts and needs from outside and university as well as inside the university relative to professional education and outreach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. That was great. And I have started to see a couple of questions that are popping up in the chat. So that's great. I'm going to pass one off in a moment. But I also want to encourage you all, you know, as Paul mentioned, you know, we are eager to interact with you and get your feedback. We're actually, planning to reach out to you after the meeting for some specific feedback. But if you'd like, you can also just send us an email at iem@umn.edu.